Hi, welcome to week 4. Um, I did like the Christian message today, at least I like all of it, but the Bible verse from Deuteronomy. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. And I looked up this verse in a little devotional related to that. And it talks about the importance of passing down God's teachings and commandments to our children. It emphasizes the significance of intentional and constant guidance in educating the next generation about faith and values. So it ties very well in with our chapter and our readings and the video for this week, talking about values and a lot of what we're passing on to children we're doing through modeling. And so that's kind of a key point, I think, this week is looking at character education and how do kids gain that character? How do we show good character to our colleagues, to the parents we interact with, to our students? And the textbook talks about teachers respecting children and training children to respect teachers. And I, as a classroom teacher, find that to be very valuable. I find that if I respect a child, and I think that respect comes with understanding who they are, giving them an appropriate education, supporting their ideas, giving them that respect, giving them guidance, and then I know they'll respect me in return because they feel that I value them. And that's really important to me as a teacher. Our textbook talks about this theory of Brenner, who talks about the impact and influence on children. And, you think an infant starts with a very small world of having parents, maybe a sibling, grandparents, that their world is just a few people. And then as they have more experiences with childcare, with education, that world gets bigger and the influences get to be greater. We value then the relationship that that child's parent has with the teacher, that the relationship that the teacher then has with the community. And the influence goes beyond even worldwide. If you think about COVID and how impactful that was on children and their development, and it didn't necessarily need to be in their home, but the stress that it put on families, the stress that it put on the education system, it certainly had an impact. The text talks about one of my favorite things, constructivism. And I have to say, as a teacher, I struggle with this idea, not because I don't believe it, but because it pushes you outside of the box. And we use in the state of Illinois early learning standards. And so I use those standards as I plan lessons for the class, knowing what's appropriate, developmentally appropriate for students. And so I want lessons to fit into the little grid of my lesson plan. But what I need to do is also give time to support children and their ideas, their construction of ideas. So in my classroom, it might be during a free play time that my aide is sitting working on a specific skill. It might be, let's say it's graphing. And so they're working on number recognition, one-to-one correspondence. They're using vocabulary like more and less. And maybe during that time, I'm engaged with children in their play. So looking at opportunities to help them learn and advance their play. And that comes through questioning. It might be providing information. So one of the things my class loves to do is they build things with cups. So just plastic drinking cups. So I can watch them and they're working on balancing and how can they build the structure taller and taller. They're looking at ways to get themselves higher so they can build taller structures. So having them practice like, oh, maybe you need a step stool. What else could you stand on that would help? And then as they build, it might be me pulling out a yardstick and saying, oh, I wonder how tall your building is, and showing them the numbers on the yardstick. Or it could be counting, oh, you made a base of X number of cups. And so giving them some vocabulary, adding in some lessons. We could talk about balance. We could talk about that foundation and help them bring that learning and investigation to a higher level. One of the challenges I give myself and teachers is to just you release some of the control, go out into their environment and just play, because that's when we can really help support and build this idea of constructing their knowledge. The video on character education I thought was great this week. And some of those key components, those values, patience, gentleness, respect, integrity, service, these are all really good characteristics of teachers, parents of young children. And these are characteristics we want our students to gain. And so we need to be modeling that. Our textbook, page 119 and 120, have some really good lists of ways to support and show, I think, love and good character education to students. It's a lot of different pieces. So I know that as you read, you're absorbing all of this information, but look for things that really seem that they stand out to you as something maybe you don't possess yet, or something that you could try to kind of challenge yourself. Your discussion question for this week: what does quality early childhood education look like? What are some of those standards? What are some barriers? What are the things that prevent us from doing that? I see so many challenges in the field that are frustrating, because sometimes I feel like there's little I can do, but it's also great to advocate not just for students, but for early childhood education as a field. Looking at assignments, make sure that you're using that APA format. So anytime you're doing a quote or you're taking an idea from the textbook or an article, make sure that you're giving credit to the author within your text. So I know the works cited page can go at the end of a document, but as you write, you need to be showing me where you got that idea or that quote. Assignment 2, your timelines were, I thought, really fun and engaging. I loved the graphics and the photographs and a lot of information in one small document. So you did it. Great job with that. Sunday, your assignment 3 is due. So this is the PTKLF. When you use an acronym like that, which you most likely will, make sure that you tell the reader what that acronym stands for. So make sure you say it within the first paragraph or the first time you mention it, and then later you can refer to it just by the acronym. Assignment 4, you're looking at this framework for ethical decision making. So there's a web page to look at. There's some questions, 10 questions that you're going to work through. So you're going to basically submit 2 documents. One is going to be your response to the questions, and then the second is this 2 to 3 page paper. So when you respond to questions, don't worry about that being in paragraph format. You can just list the questions, give the answers, but then that 2 to 3 page paper, you need to make sure you're doing citations and following that APA format. And that you're giving a summary of why that type of framework for decision making is valuable, how you could see that working. And then you're looking ahead to assignment 5, which relates to character and ethics. So this chapter, that video, that TED Talk, fits in very well with that assignment. So looking at someone who was influential, it doesn't have to necessarily be someone from our textbook. It can be like a Martin Luther King Jr., someone who was influential, who had an impact on character education or ethical decision making. And then how can we use that person's idea in education and kind of create a framework for character education? So as a Christian educator, I find it's easy to tie in character education because we utilize the Bible as a tool and look to Jesus as a model. But in a public setting, there are other things that we need to use, other tools to use to kind of help build character and character education in young children. So please reach out if you have any questions, if assignments are confusing. This week, I'll certainly be reading and responding to posts again for you. So God's blessings on your week. And I know many of you are wrapping up your school year. So I just pray that that goes smoothly.